Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Absolute Scenes. This is number 82 on our review of the top 100 IMDb bucket list movies. Today we've got Toy Story. It's a 1995 computer animated film, and it is the very first feature length film that is completely computer animated. So it was a real groundbreaking film at the time. It follows a world of Andy's bedroom where his toys come to life, and there's a bit of a hierarchy of the toys, with Woody being his favorite, and then a new toy arrives on the scene, and it really follows the competing rivalries and story behind the different affections of Andy with the new toy. So we'll be talking as normal, spoiler free to start with, going to be fairly short. I imagine most people have seen this film before. We'll then give it a rating and then talk with spoilers, and we'll answer the question, is this to infinity and beyond, or has someone poisoned the waterhole? Okay, Dan, as I said, it's a groundbreaking film. It was the first ever fully computer animated feature-length film, and it's got a score of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Doesn't
Is this
surprise me.
is this a case of it was all downhill after this one for computer animated films? You'll never get better than it. What do you think?
No, because this isn't my favorite Pixar film. I do think they've done a couple that are better. There's also some significantly worse. The special effects, like the CGI and the computer animation from then to now, are worlds apart. Even if you look at Toy Story 4, the way that they manipulate camera lenses as if it's a live action film is completely mind blowing. So they've definitely gotten technically more advanced. But I don't know about you, but I remember when this first came out and it completely blew my mind what they were doing, because there were a few little computer animated things about. There were usually single characters in other films, or I think you had the odd really bad music video. But it was so captivating and pulled you right into the world. And watching it again, I didn't think it aged very badly at all. I think it does an excellent job. There are a couple of characters in there. I don't know if you noticed the clones of Andy. So all the kids around his party are just Andy again, because they couldn't make other ones, and the dog looks terrible. But outside of the cockeyed dog and Andy's clones, I thought it really held up. I was very, very surprised because I haven't seen this film for a long time. I used to watch it weekly as a child. I was 6 when this came out. So I had the VHS. I couldn't afford any of the actual toys. I think I got like a £2 bucket of soldiers, like just from down the pound shop, whatever. I got a couple of buckets of them, and that was about it. Because I'm sure that they were selling those buckets of army soldiers for like 35, 40 quid back in the day, completely monopolizing what they had. Absolutely shameless at Disney. What about you? Do you think they peaked with this one?
I mean, firstly on the animation, you're absolutely right. It was absolutely groundbreaking at the time. If you put it in context, I think of 1995, there was animations in video games and stuff. And if you compare it to that, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
And you are right. It's not, obviously it's moved on and you do see that in certain things, but still the level of detail when you watch it is impressive. When the soldiers are there's a point at which they're trotting along the floor, and there you can see all the effort that's gone into making scuffs on the skirting board, and the door looks aged and things like that. So the animation is terrific, considering it's the first animated full film. But yeah, I think the dog is really noticeable because the animation's moved on so much, and it's absolutely incredible these days. If you watch something like
yeah.
Monsters Inc. and you see all the hairs that move on the monsters, and you compare that to the dog in Toy Story, yeah, it's worlds apart. But it's aged well. It looks good. It's still enjoyable to watch visually. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
I think one of the reasons why the dog looks so funny is because of the shape of the dog. So with this film, obviously the way that they did it and they accomplished the animation through the original Pixar programming, which I think what they did was they took some disgruntled animators from Industrial Light and Magic and a few other places and like want to try and do this. And I think even some of the animators from Disney went to Pixar. They got funded by
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. I was thinking Bill Gates. It wasn't Bill Gates. It was Apple Man.
That's
By Steve Jobs.
That's your vaccine kicking in that done.
Yeah. Bill Gates. My master. So yeah, by Steve Jobs. And one of the biggest problems that they had was trying to get around shapes and how to create them, because the only shapes that they could have really were circles, triangles, and squares. So when you have the dog with a very triangular face, and I think it's one of the only triangular sort of characters, everything else is really round or square. So it was very easy for them. So I think trying to have this pointy dog nose with two eyes that were meant to be organic, obviously with the toys. So the worst animation actually holds up quite well, because I think it makes it look more realistic as toys. It kind of does the film a favor after all these years, but with the dog, it obviously makes it considerably worse. And we never really hang around the human characters too much to notice anything. I imagine Andy and Sid are just kind of the same, with a few things organically like changed.
Getting onto the story then, Dan, I did a little bit of reading up on the background of Toy Story just to read some of the history. And there was a lot of, ripping up of the script, and Disney didn't like the script, wanted it completely rewritten. And then there was even a case at one point where they put a complete pause on production because they wanted the character of Woody to be changed. What do you think to the story? And do you think that's what really sets it apart from other films?
I think it's a great story. I think it's quite funny because the story that you were talking about was that Woody was far too sarcastic and he was incredibly mean-spirited in their original draft. And they had obviously created it to a degree, storyboarded it, and everyone just thought, we do not like this character. But I still find it quite interesting watching it when I thought all the characters are still dicks anyway. Like all of them are dicks.
I always remember that. Always remember that thinking, Mr. Potato Head, what a
He's
dick
a nasty,
he is.
nasty man, isn't he? He's got some issues. But what I really like about it is when you're a child with a story, it's a lot of it's through Woody's eyes. So you have immediately a lot of sympathy for Woody. So you can kind of get past the fact that he, tries attempted murder and a few other things, and at least he learns his lesson. And overall, the story is absolutely fantastic. And that's something that I want to probably talk about in spoilers more, because I feel there's like a lot of philosophy in this film, like with how to deal with things and identity. And there's so much jam-packed for adults. There's even little adult jokes like the Picasso joke and the should I get someone else to watch my sheep tonight? And there's where the toys were made, I was absolutely like I just buckled laughing. Well, I never laughed at that as a child when he said, I'm from Sector 17 or wherever he says he's from, and they're like, I'm from Mattel. We're not really Mattel, I was bought by a conglomerate. It's like a Michelin Web sketch. Do you know when they do the Scooby-Doo sketch?
Yeah.
It's a bit like I can imagine them dressing up as toys and doing something like that. So I found stuff like that really funny now. And it's really deep. I don't think it's just a face value movie of, this is toys. So that's why it holds up. That's why people still love it. And you could show a child now, you can show an adult now. And I think everyone would be really, really happy watching this film. As so many people are, it is one of the biggest films ever made. And rightfully so. Not just because it's groundbreaking, but because the story's great. The dialogue is absolutely fantastic. The actors do an amazing job. It's a total win.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a masterstroke, the way they targeted a kids film and making sure that it's got enough in there for adults for them to actually see completely different things in it and enjoy the viewing experience. And most kids films that are deemed to be classics, I think, all have that kind of same vein going through them, that they can appeal to adults and an adult can enjoy watching it. So this film does it absolutely fantastically.
Is there anything that you didn't enjoy about this other than the dog?
I don't think there's really anything not to enjoy about it. I remember when I was a kid, I actually thought Bearing in mind, I was very young then, right? So I'm going to admit, I think they're all quite scary things,
Yeah, definitely.
in Sid's room, and some of the
Yeah.
toys. I used to actually find them a little. I wouldn't say scary, but
It's okay, Mitchell. You
a little.
don't need to be. Look, if you were scared by Toy Story at any point, you can talk to us. It's fine. We're here for you. Like there's nothing unmanly about it. It's okay. It's a creepy baby doll's head with one eye on metal crawlers.
Look, that is the scariest character in it, and I've been holding it back and hiding it all these years. But yeah, I see it in my sleep.
That's the eye.
That is, and that kid's actually quite sadistic.
Yeah,
Sid.
he's got some issues. There's definitely he's been let down by his parents in some way. To be allowed to do all that, I think there's the connotation that his dad was drunk and asleep in that chair. I think it's just like fake cans of cola or whatever knocking around. But I think there's definitely, as an adult, you look at it go, he's neglectful, and maybe some other things. But you got some issues, Sid. I really want to see the sequel where I appreciate Sid is in one of the sequels as he's the garbage man, but I'd like to see a twisted sequel where we go through his trauma of seeing toys come alive and threaten him. I think that'd be quite an interesting sequel to have. But I quite like the horror scenes. I like the change of pace. There'll be some people, if anyone hasn't seen this, then I imagine it's because it's an animated film and for no other reason, because it's massive. But I like the fact that they do play off classic buddy cop tropes of the 1980s, like Lethal Weapon and stuff, where it's two warring ideologies essentially that butt heads, and then they've got to sort of come together while they're on this adventure. And then there's elements of horror and, like I say, identity and all that sort of stuff that we can talk about in spoilers. But I just thought everything that they went for, they did really well. Like they did the homeliness, the things that really remind you of a Saturday afternoon when you were a child and it's sunny and you can play out with your friends, you can play with your toys. I thought they got the tone amazing for that. And then the tone of the adventure aspect to it when they leave Andy's room, and then the horror aspect of Sid's. I was petrified as a child of those bits until I'd seen it so many times. And then it's like, oh, this bit's uncomfortable. And whilst all remaining in the same sort of spirit of the movie, that everything is about imagination. So I think for them to jump between genres within their one genre, I thought was masterfully done. It was absolutely brilliant.
I think before we go into ratings, let's touch upon just something else in the film that I think's great, and that is some of the music. And You Got a Friend in Me. What a fantastic film song, right?
Yeah, it's iconic. It's whenever you say Toy Story, I think it's the first thing I think of. Not even the rest of the song, I don't think. It's just the music. That was released as like a pop song as well. It came out in its entirety. They did sort of the same thing with Tarzan when Phil Collins wrote the soundtrack for that, and they just released his songs. Whereas if you look at something like The Lion King, Elton John wrote the songs and released them, but in the film, it's Elton John's nowhere near the film. Did you notice? So there's a big theory with Pixar that, and I think with some of the later through the Disney Renaissance period and onwards, that they include something from another Pixar or Disney film in there. Did you notice what the other inclusion was for this film?
I didn't.
So it was whilst Woody and Buzz were on RC, I'll not say anything else, and Andy and his family are in the car, and it's on Molly's little sister. Hakuna Matata's playing. So that's the link back to that one. Like they've all got them, and it's sort of like a little game to try and find them. So I quite like how even at the beginning they were doing little things like that. I think the only negative that I have isn't, it's like a real nitpick, and if I'm being honest, doesn't massively affect my enjoyment of the movie. And as a child, I didn't understand this at all. I didn't get it. This is not me as a child's opinion, when you might look at something. This is me as an overthinking adult doing 100 movie reviews, trying to read into things. I've got to go into it in spoilers. I just want to sort of touch basis with what it is. just for my ratings and stuff. And that is, there seems to be some kind of existential philosophy in this film with regarding to the characters' identities. And I just felt that towards the end, I think even the writers were a little confused with what they were trying to say. I think that's really obvious. I don't think that is me overly looking into them being existential. I think it hits you right in the face with both character arcs. They are both about who you are and what you're worth and what your role in the world is and how that can change and how you might have an idea of who you are and that's not who you are. And so I don't think that's me overly looking into it, but bringing it up in a movie review is me taking things too far. But I'll talk about it in spoilers later on. We'll see if you got any. Did you even get any of that?
Yeah, no, I've written those down as themes to discuss, and that leads on to some sub themes as well. Around
Happy days. We'll talk about that after.
Yeah, but I do like the idea of, like 6-year-old Dan coming out of the cinema and being like, being to your mum, being like, Mum, just the way they portrayed the sense of self-worth, and I mean, I'm never going to get over this.
How do you know that I didn't?
You might have, I don't know.
Probably did. Probably did. Probably cry my eyes out. Ma'am, this film has a terrible representation of nihilism and existential crises. 1 star. No, never said anything like that. Loved it and wanted all the toys. That's how I responded to this film. Watched it on repeat, and at the very end, it was always, I just want there to be a sequel. When they did bring out number 2, just like mind blown. Although this one is, I think there's a good mix of people to which Toy Story you prefer and how you want to order them. I don't think it's like Star Wars, for example, where 99% of people go, Empire Strikes Back's the best, or Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark's the best. There's the Dark Knight trilogy. The Dark Knight's the best. This one has such an even distribution of 1, 2, 3, and 4. People believing one is the best and one is the worst is just across the board. But I do think this one is the best of the 4, my personal opinion.
I think it also depends on your age sometimes with Toy Story, because it's something you would probably watch for the first time as a kid. There's memories and nostalgia associated with it, probably a bit more than, I'm not sure I was watching Star Wars as a kid and being in love with it, whereas you watch it a bit older and you think, yeah, it's a fantastic film. But
yeah. Should we rate it?
Different for you though, Dan, as the
I love Star Wars. That's the next film, Return of the Jedi. We'll be watching it. It's all in here already. Do you want me to go first, or are you going to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go first, Dan. Lead the way.
Right. So we'll start with technical quality. We'll get that one out of the way. This is groundbreaking. It changed cinema forever. It changed what we can expect computers to do. It was incredibly brave of everyone to ditch successful properties that they were working on previously to come and even attempt this. Beyond that, I think their attempt at mixing incredibly adult philosophies with the most childlike idea for a story ever is done so seamlessly and well. The dialogue's great. The voice acting is immense. There's a reason why they've made another 3 films after this, and it's a series that's now spanned, what is it, 15 years? Something like that? 20 years? It's insane. Yeah, it'll be 25 years, 1995. So it's just so high. It has to be like a 9.6 or something ridiculous, because it is the first, but it remains one of the best. It's not one of those things where you go, oh, like you wouldn't have this without this, but the original's pretty crap. Like the wheel, you're not going to say the first wheel was the best wheel. Like you wouldn't see Formula One drivers going around it, but this film is still arguably the best Pixar film. It's definitely in the conversation, if not the best. And it was made 25 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, huge score, Dan, and I can't really go against a lot of what you've said there. It is groundbreaking. It still stands up to this day. And I think I watched it this morning for this review, and I haven't watched it in quite a long time. And I think there is that little fear that you're going to watch something and it's going to start to feel dated, look a bit crap, and it's not actually. It's still fantastic. The animation's still great. You can still enjoy that. Music, as I mentioned, I love the music in there. But yeah, the story, absolutely fantastic. The dialogue, it's genuinely funny. It's a genuinely funny comedy movie, as well as telling a very good story. I have, for all I think all Pixar films are absolutely fantastic. But
Cars 3, Finding Dory.
I don't know, that's a classic.
Finding Dory is absolutely horrendous, and I'm so happy it's not on the list.
My problem is that they tend to kind of all follow the same story structure, which for this one, for Toy Story, don't mind at all, because it was the first of their films. It's absolutely fantastic, and as you said, I think it really lends itself to exploring a good theme in a really opposite and playful manner. So I think it's fantastic in that regard. So
yeah, there's. Oh, sorry. Go.
Let me do a score, Dan. I'm going 9.5.
Oh, so close. Yeah, I remember seeing a sort of 20-page structure for how you write a Pixar film, and it was by Pixar writers. And when you look at it, and it was obviously just for any story, they are master storytellers. Little things like coincidences should only ever work against the protagonists, never to make things easier. So write as many coincidences as you can, just make everything get harder because of it. And all these things about conflict and resolution, they are total masters at work when you watch Pixar films. But you're right, they do follow the same structure. But I'm not too bothered. Ultimately, they've still got to satisfy children.
And I think a great example of that in this film is I'll leave it for spoilers.
Spoilers. Okay, well, we'll get into that in spoilers. So enjoyment wise, so difficult to rate this, because if 6-year-old Daniel or 7-year-old Daniel was doing this for enjoyment, it's probably like a 9.7 or something like that. I used to watch it weekly. Doesn't say much. I used to do the same with Pocahontas and Aladdin and The Lion King and Star Wars. Just stick them on all the time. Watching it now, I think I benefited from not seeing it for so long. So there was a point where I'm sure this was on the telly about 5 or 6 years ago when I saw this again. And so when we had to watch this for this review, I wasn't overly excited, but the time flew. I thought it was great. I still enjoyed it. So I'm going to try and be fair to someone who maybe hasn't seen this before and give this film a 9.1 for enjoyment.
Big scores this week.
Yeah.
I think what I love in the enjoyment sense is, as I say, genuinely funny movie. But I love all the different characters and the way, each character they've really taken some time to think, right, what toys can we use in this story? We want to give them a practical use, but also then a character that matches their what they are as a toy, and then use it in the story. And I think that it's so fun and it's so clever how they've done that with all of the characters. So I think that is the real big enjoyment for me. There's so much everywhere in the background. Everything's been thought of in the animation of details, and you're always seeing something new, and you can always watch it and look out for different things. So I think the enjoyment is there on first viewing for the story, and then second viewing and onwards for trying to see different things in it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 as well.
Great. The one thing that you were saying with the characters as well is I quite like the one subversion with Rex, that he's like trying to learn to roar. He's a rubbish dinosaur. He's really insecure. And then when he does decide that he's secure with another dinosaur coming, he wants it to be a vegetarian so that he can be the dominant dinosaur, which is definitely had like a naughty sexual connotation to it at the end. But there are loads in these films. Like even the names of Woody and Buzz can definitely be misconstrued as names for other types of toys. So I like just the little adult jokes in there throughout were absolutely great. And that's what sort of, it made me laugh like I'd seen it for the first time, because I just didn't get any of those jokes when I was little, obviously. Like you don't have like the headspace to think of that sort of thing. So I want to ask, have you seen Toy Story? If you haven't, what are you doing? go watch it now. I imagine everyone has. So please stick around while we talk spoilers. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We are at scenes_YT. Like and subscribe for all of our other videos, in particular the ones that you haven't seen. You were about to reveal something there in your rating that you were going to spoil.
It was just when you were talking about Pixar's guide to writing stories, and you were talking about coincidences and how they shouldn't always just work in the favor of the protagonist. You should, try and do as many as you can because it keeps you guessing. And in this film, you see some examples of that. So the best one, I think, is when they're on the remote control car and Buzz Lightyear's got the rocket strapped to his back. And then,
Brilliant.
there's obviously then the coincidence that Woody has the match in his pocket from when Sid was going to put him on the barbecue. And you're thinking, oh, isn't that lucky? He's got the match in his pocket. And then he lights it and the car goes past and blows it out. And you're like, oh, that's a great, like, that
It's a
didn't,
great gag, isn't it?
yeah. And they could have just lit it and then they'd be off and that the story would be exactly the same. But that's really clever to put that little surprise in there, a little bit of peril. I mean, it takes them a few seconds to then find another way of doing it, but it is clever because you're right. It means there's always surprises. So even when you see things that are often maybe foreshadowing, like, oh, that's going to be important later. You never really know that with these films because they want to put those surprises in.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about that scene, other than the fact that it just totally pulls the rug from underneath you, is that the actual outcome that they have to use the sun was set up earlier on because Woody has the magnifying glass put onto his forehead, which is really clever. It's not just, oh, this toy knows how to do this, but also it's kind of this idea, particularly I think for children. I think it's a little too thin for adults, really, but I think it's a great idea for children to show that when things will happen and sometimes they may not be good, they might be great, they might be bad, but you use whatever you learn earlier, even in bad situations, to your advantage to help you out in the future. So you might have something bad happen to you, but that's a lesson. And you, whether that be, to avoid danger or to just help you out in a sticky spot, or whether it's something just outright positive, that you can use these things. I just thought that was such a great thing that they didn't, you're right, they absolutely did not have to put any of that in. And it wasn't harmed in with regards to the magnifying glass because that is right up Sid's street. He's torturing all these toys. So everything fits in perfectly with the characters. And it's one of the ultimate things that shows Woody's change in mindset. It's not just his emotional arc when he has his heart to heart with Buzz in his prison cell in Sid's room. It's that Woody was willing to change. At the beginning, he wasn't willing to change. He wasn't willing to accept. He wasn't willing to learn anything. All he knew was Andy's room, and he came out of Andy's room, and he had a really tough time, and everything was still Woody's way. And yet, through the story, he's learned to learn essentially, which I thought was just like a really nice touch. So, we'd sort of mentioned earlier that there were some sort of philosophical points, and you had one written down at least. So, do you want to talk about that?
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as philosophical points for me. It's just a bit of a discussion of the theme, and you were already touching upon it a bit of understanding your own existence, and you talked about existential threats, crisis. I can't remember.
An existential crisis. Yeah,
Yeah,
but a Buzz in particular when he sees himself and realizes that he's a toy,
yeah.
and then goes absolutely crazy. And I love that scene where he's obviously just been given like some kind of tea, and he's acting like he's absolutely hammered. It's just like, quite funny.
I've got written down, talking about that exact scene actually, Buzz's realization there of who he is or what he is, and it's completely different to his at that point his entire understanding about his own existence, and it really mirrors the journey Woody's been on in the film as well, because Buzz has got all his identity and his self-worth from being this space ranger and working for Star Command, and Woody's at this point in the story is based on being Andy's favorite toy and kind of being the leader of Andy's bedroom. So you're seeing both of them different points in the film having this having this complete loss of identity and self-worth, and then it's thrown in there with jealousy and trust, and I just think it's really smart. It's a great theme to run with in this setting, and it allows them to explore a whole host of different behaviors between people, and in both between them two as people, but then also seeing the way the group acts as well when you see them having these changes in identity and how the group perceives them and stuff. I think it's really clever.
Yeah, I think for me, where the confusion comes in is it's there for everyone to see, even as a child. And I think and if we talk about it from a child's perspective, I think it teaches three great lessons. One regarding Woody's journey through jealousy, so that you shouldn't be jealous, basically. Buzz's existential crisis on his identity, and there are lots that between the ages of like 7 and 11, or when children start realizing things about themselves, like a bit morbid, like you can die, things like things like that. I think Ernest Becker said it's 7, 6 and 7, you have a concept of death, but it's for old people.
He plays the Nets for Liverpool, right?
Yeah, he does. Ernest Becker scored that header. um and then between sort of the ages of 9, 10 and 11 is that you realize it happens to you. And there are obviously other things happening hormonally where you will possibly realize things about yourself, whether that may be your gender or your sexuality and things like this, or even just the person that you want to be, and you start coming into your own person. So I think Buzz is an amazing reflection of that period in a child's life, and there will be some children that really cling to Buzz as a character for it. And then the third lesson is with the other toys is sort of don't be presumptuous. Try to sort of positively assume, even though Woody definitely does try to commit some kind of crime against Buzz. He doesn't mean to knock him out the window, but he definitely means to knock him down the side of that bed. And, to listen, and what you might see may not be what's actually happening. So I think they're all great. As an adult watching this, though, I think it gets a little confused because the idea of this story is that Andy is clearly some manifestation of God. He manipulates them. And even when Woody says, you are a child's plaything, if we change these to human beings, it's, I think it was King Lear when, we are God as a child and we are spiders and he's pulling off our legs and all this sort of stuff. We as humans are, if you believe in God, God's plaything. So there's this amazing sort of question about Woody, who has one ideology that is religion, it's worship God and everything you do is for God. And Buzz is more of an existential nihilist, sort of, well, not nihilist, but he's got his own agenda. It's not God. It's not anything else. He's got to stop is it Zog? Is that his name?
Yeah.
And he's got to get back to Sector 12 and he's got to relay the information, all this stuff. And then he realizes that none of it's real. He isn't who he thought he was, all this sort of stuff. But the answer that Buzz ends up finding is, well, okay, my purpose I thought was that, isn't that, which was his own purpose, but is now Andy, which is God. And what's really confusing about it is, again, Ernest Becker, who talked about death denial and hero complexes and things like that, said that nihilism was formed when people lose religion. So people lose a sense of God, lose a sense of hope, and then we need something. So we become existential. We create own meanings in our life. And this film works in the exact reverse of that. Someone has a meaning, realizes that's false, and then finds the deity of the story.
I was looking at it much more along the idea of just human emotions. Yeah, that jealousy, that hierarchical structure that they almost introduce almost immediately when Woody's leading the meeting, when he's on the microphone and kind of telling them, right, it's Andy's birthday coming up, and essentially giving direction to the rest of the toys that are there. And it's just that loss of place in the world. And actually, I think it's quite interesting when you talk about what it means to kids of that age, because you can really relate it to like a peer group. at that age where, think about something where if there's a new kid that comes in, or if you move schools, and it's that idea that some sort of external threat is now mixed up the peer group, and it's like you can see that in terms of who are people now going to see as the favorite, who are people going to hang out with and see as there's always a little leader of a group, isn't there? So
appreciate like what you've just said there with like everyone's got all this excitement around Buzz as well, and then there are people that feel threatened. And even when you watch the second, the third, the fourth, there's like no excitement around Buzz whatsoever. Everyone's just he's just another toy. No one really cares. So I do think that's really interesting. That's the great thing about this film, is that you can take it anywhere you want. There's so much in it. There's so much to look into. And yet there is also absolutely nothing to look into at all at the same time. You can just sit down and watch a cowboy and a space ranger scuffle the way through crazy situations, through hilarious dialogue, and seeing them all get wound up and just totally relax. And that's the joy of Pixar, and where I think their films ultimately fail or succeed. I think the best films satisfy everyone and they're capable of doing that, and one doesn't get in the way of the other. So when I mentioned, the sort of tin hat religion thing, at no point would you ever think of that unless you were a bit older and you were looking for it. Like that would never come across any child's brain or most adults. It just does not hit you over the head with anything. And you came away with the hierarchy and like school and all that sort of stuff. And everyone can just have their own little slice of this Pizza Planet pizza and enjoy it whatever way they want, and it's not overbearing to anyone. So that's amazing. The one thing with this film is that I did feel really hungry while watching it because of Pizza Planet. And every time when I was little watching it, and you see the when they're getting the little soft drinks and the burger and the running around in the boxes, and obviously it's Pizza Planet. Who doesn't love pizza? I think it really taps into 90s commercialism. Like it could be absolute crap inside those boxes, taste terrible, whatever, but it's in this flashy merchandise box and it got all these flashing lights. And it really reminded me of going to Disneyland when I was 7, and there's a Planet Hollywood there. And the 90s was like a crazy time for all this stuff where it was excess. We don't care. There's no sugar tax. There's, nothing's recyclable. There's everything's guilt free. Have it all. Have all this junk.
The days of supersize.
Oh yeah, size. Yeah, they've all gone. But it made us hungry watching it and thinking, I kind of just want to go back there for a day, Space Jam, and going to the pictures and eating loads of crap and not having to worry about anything.
I have to say though, Pizza Planet, I think the scene in there when they're in the claw machine, that's got to be one of the saddest bits of the film. When the claw comes, picks up the one of the little aliens, and he's like, farewell, friends, I'm going to a better place. And it's Sid, and you're just like, oh no, he thinks he's gone off to a wonderful place.
That you just reminded us there as well. The scene at the end where they do an amazing zombie scene, little things like that where they just inject so much creativity. So you've got, obviously you go through like a Mary Shelley style Frankenstein horror scene in the bedrooms to an all-out zombie apocalypse outside, but at no point do you ever feel like you aren't in the same film. So you're never bored. There's not one point in this film where you think, oh, what time is it now? And did you watch this all in one go, Mitchell?
Yeah. Well, it's quite a short film, to be fair.
Yeah, it is, but it's still rare for you. You've seen short films before in 2 goes. Intermission, Mitch.
Yeah, I can watch a 10-minute YouTube video and it'll be in 2 goes. Although it'll be in about 4 these days, YouTube, because you stick so many adverts in.
Yeah, or if it's one of our videos, it'll take you all week.
Yeah. The only thing we probably haven't touched on much, I guess, is like the voice acting. I don't know if there's much to say apart from Tom Hanks is great and everything, so there's no real surprise there.
And Tim Allen was excellent in this. Arguably the best thing he's done.
Yeah.
Close, maybe. He was great in Jungle to Jungle.
But I did read actually, like loads of people, he was definitely not top of the list. And I think
Iconic now. I couldn't think of anyone else. I tell you about voice acting. Did you recognize the army soldier, the lead army soldier, who he was? He was our drill sergeant instructor from Full Metal Jacket.
well, there we
So
go.
that's another sequel I'd like to see, like a short spin-off of him, but as the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket in green army man format, like just slandering all of his troops in front of all the toys for half a film. So lots of sequel ideas. Just Pixar, if you want to give us a call. Got loads of ideas that'll obviously fail. I'd enjoy it.
This was our review of Toy Story, and I think we've answered the question that it was definitely To Infinity and Beyond. Me and Dan obviously both love this film, so it's an absolute classic, and it was a groundbreaking animated film. So do you agree? Please let us know in the comments below. Give us your scores in the enjoyment scale and then the technical quality scale. And let us know if there's some other animated films that you think are must watch, and if Pixar have indeed surpassed themselves since Toy Story. You can catch us on Twitter, @teams_YT. Please leave a like if you like the video. Please subscribe to the channel and catch us next time. And we'll be talking about one of Dan's all-time favorite films. What's the film, Dan?
Lord of the Rings. Star Wars Return of the Jedi. So I'm excited for it. I might bring the old Darth Vader telephone out as well for that one. Might do everything like that through the phone.
You got to do the whole review talking like Yoda.
Just little laughs like that.
There's a sneak preview. Come back, watch us next time, and you'll see plenty more of that.
Bye now.